On June 26, 2021, conversations on social media picked up regarding the news that Slave One would be sold as Boba Fett's Starship on the next set of the ship to be released later this year. Looking into it, we found that the information came from a Media Days event in late May 2021 for recognized LEGO fan media, or RLFM. In a Q&A on their own website, LEGO defines RLFM. Let's read. A recognized LFM is a term owned by the LEGO Group. It is how we identify fan-driven and owned media that we have recognized, given access and participation rights to on the LEGO Ambassador Network. The minimum requirements for recognition as an RLFM can be found here, as well as how to apply for recognition. James Burns from JediNews.com reported that he and a user from Brickset.com, both apparently RLFMs, had an exchange with the design team at LEGO during the event. Here is the exchange they released. Jens, then, the next one, also from The Mandalorian, is Boba Fett's Starship. Michael, yes, I built another. We're not calling it Slave One anymore. This is Boba Fett's Starship. James, okay. Why are we dropping the Slave One name? Jens, everybody is. It's probably not something which has been announced publicly, but it is just something that Disney doesn't want to use anymore. A few weeks later, from Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky, model company Round 2 streamed live. Let's watch.
Then we've got Boba Fett Starfighter. Yes, they have renamed the ship. That was not our choice, but that's what we're going to call it now. So that's just a straight reissue of the Boba Fett Starfighter.
A recently released card on the Star Wars Card Trader app is named as shown. It should be noted that some users claim past cards of Slave One retain the name. No conspiracy theories, no overreactions. It's clear that Disney Lucasfilm is renaming the ship. It's clear why they are doing it. Disney, like most or all Fortune 500 companies, have been overrun by political correctness gone mad. Lucasfilm recently posted a job opening for a manager of diversity and inclusion, not just for the company, but for the productions. This includes responsibility to advise on content, especially stories and characters, to make sure our content is culturally accurate, authentic, and inclusive. In this video, we're going to show how this kind of thinking is unnuanced, simple-minded, and exclusionary. It's well established that the typical social justice warrior has challenges understanding concepts such as allegory and hyperbole. They see the word slave, and a cause is instantly created. But let's first look at the definitions, yes, that is plural, of the word. From Merriam-Webster. Noun, a person held in forced servitude. A person who is completely subservient to a dominating influence. A device, such as the printer of a computer, that is directly responsive to another. Verb, to work very hard for long hours or under difficult conditions. To traffic in people to be sold into slavery. To make directly responsive to another mechanism. And, archaically, enslave, adjective, of, relating to, involving or used for slavery or enslaved people. Held in or forced into servitude. Favoring or legally permitting slavery. Operated by remote control. There's a good chance you've heard someone say that they're a slave to their hobby. There is a better chance you've called your boss a slave driver, an exaggeration. There is as equally as good a chance that you've heard of a slave clock or a slave cylinder. All of these examples cover hyperbole and allegory. And now for the etymology, also from Merriam-Webster. Middle English sclave, from Anglo-French or Medieval Latin, Anglo-French esclave, from Medieval Latin sclavis, from sclavis Slav, from the frequent enslavement of Slavs in Central Europe during the early Middle Ages. In this art from Otto's Gospel book, circa 990 AD, the leftmost figure represents a Slav of the time. Let's read from the recent tweet of a well-known SJW, Tricia Barr, an occasional Star Wars writer. I will say it again, because its canon is the single biggest obstacle against writing the course on representation and inclusion. Slave anything as a marketing ploy in Star Wars is inappropriate. I heard a while ago that was the franchise's position now, as it should be. Drawing the logical conclusion, Tricia is equating slaves with those in need of representation and inclusion. I don't think she means slaves need representation, who, in the minds of her and those like her, are in need of representation and inclusion. She is equating certain races with the role of slave. As we saw earlier, the origin of the word is derived from a people who do not fit the racial mold of those whom she feels need representation. Taking the simple-mindedness to the next level, let's look at the etymology of some other words. From etymon line, the word robot. From Czech robotnik, or forced worker. From robota, forced labor, compulsory service, drudgery. From robotiti, to work, drudge. From an old Czech source akin to Old Church Slavonic, rabota, servitude. From rabu, slave. From Old Slavic, orbu. From Proto-Indo-European, orb. Better scrub that term from all the material.
If they trace the robots here, they may have learned who they sold them to, and that would lead them back home. Oh, wait.
But let's look at the word droid, derived from android. From modern Latin androides. Andro, from Greek for man, and eides, for form or shape. This would indicate that the term is exclusively male. Isaac Asimov himself, in a September 1979 issue of his science fiction magazine, in an editorial on the vocabulary of science fiction, would touch on the topic. Let's read. Strictly speaking, an android should be an artificial device with the appearance of a male human being. One with the appearance of a female human being would be a gynoid, from the Greek word gynos, meaning woman. However, I have never seen the word gynoid used for any artificial device of human appearance. Android is used for artificial devices that mimic either sex or, for that matter, that are neuter. Later in the editorial, he would also trace the origin of the word robot, as we did earlier. Seeing as how the term droid, derived from android, is inherently male, should we start calling robots with feminine programming noids, short for gynoids? Noids.
We keep the noid out and all the quality in, so avoid the noid.
Let's leave aside pointing out the fallacy and singling out one word for cancellation and look at some in-universe reasoning. The names of some cargo ships contain words that indicate the line of work they are in, such as Dubak's burden. When the name Slave One first appeared in print, shown here in the Empire Strikes Back novelization, a good assumption would have been that it was named for the laborious activity its owner put it through. Let's consider for a moment Jango Fett's backstory from Jango Fett, Open Seasons. And Jango Fett. We were forced to hand him over to the governor of Galadran. He became a slave. How did he escape? And later, he sold me to slavers. I rotted on a spice transport for years, until pirates raided the vessel. And now for a few clips from the 2002 game Star Wars, Bounty Hunter.
Hey, did you name that new ship of yours yet?
She's called Slave One.
There's kind of a ruthless ring to it. Fits your personality.
Bounty hunter, you found me. Now tell me, who hired you? Oh, a strong silent type. I like that. More of a challenge. I once tried to resist, but the Bandagora have ways of weakening your mind and breaking your will. Soon, you will be my slave. Bounty hunter. Touched a nerve.
Jango Fett could have named his ship Slave One in defiance of his past. Going deeper psychologically, he could have named it such as a sort of projection, having a need to control something as a slave, as he was once controlled. What I found next was most interesting. Going back to one of the real-world definitions, slave circuit systems exist in the Star Wars universe, as defined here in the complete Star Wars Encyclopedia. Here is an excerpt from Slave Ship, the second book in the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy by K.W. Jeter. The whole emergency repair process had taken only a few seconds. Slave One was like a living organism designed in its essence to heal itself. Boba Fett could feel in his own nerve endings when that happened, just as any wound to the ship's fabric was sensed as a wound to himself. The only things closer to him, even more of a perceived extension to his spirit, were the weapons he carried. Those were as much a part of him as his own hands, instruments of his will. Very interesting indeed. In a tweet that was apparently deleted as I checked my own quote tweet in incognito mode to no avail, an account brought up the renaming of the Executor toy. Let's talk about that. From Stephen J. Sansweet's 1992 book, Star Wars, From Concept to Screen to Collectible. What's in a name? If it's Darth Vader's massive Star Destroyer spaceship and it's named Executor, plenty. Kenner asked that it be allowed to call the ship something else due to the aura the name Executor might have presented in a television commercial or on a package directed at kids. So Kenner challenged its ad agency, Gray Advertising, to come up with an alternative. The ad agency came up with a list of 153 possibilities, ranging from the cartoonish, Starbase Malevolent, to the demonic, Black Coven, to the mythologic, Hephaestus 7, to the just plain silly, Cosmo Curse. However, the list didn't include the simplest and now obvious final choice, Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. From Star Wars, Year by Year, a Visual History Updated and Expanded Edition, in the section apparently written by Ryder Wyndham, Darth Vader's Star Destroyer action playset is released by Kenner. Although the Empire Sketchbook identifies Vader's flagship as the Executor, the name is not mentioned in the movie itself, and Kenner, reportedly concerned that most toy buyers would not know that an Executor is a person who carries out a will or policy and is not a synonym for assassin, was hesitant to use the name for toy packaging. Let's be clear, renaming a toy to cater to an audience you perceive to be stupid was a bad decision in 1980, and it's a bad decision now. It's even worse to rename a toy, a piece of lore, in an attempt to either virtue signal, absolve yourself of perceived guilt, or both. Which brings us to our next point. If context is not going to be used with the word slave, then how does the woke crowd get around this?
It's not about the mission, Master, but Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
With every slave, there is a master. No context or alternative definitions needed. Rename every character, ship, or piece of equipment with the word in it. Reshoot scenes with new dialogue. The real reason for this particular change being of immediate concern is obvious. With the Book of Boba Fett taking center stage for Disney Star Wars this winter, anything associated with the character will be more noticeable than ever. They're preemptively correcting what they consider to be an old mistake and attempting to appease the woke mob while patting themselves on the back for their own ingenuity, if Tricia Barr's comments are any indication. Speaking of Barr again, there was online chatter back in 2015 when Ultimate Star Wars, a convoluted and messy reference book, was released about Slave One, being called Clone One in the book, as you see being claimed here by a poster on the Force.net forums. I have the original edition of the book, and I am not able to find the reference. I am also unable to find a screenshot on the internet, and not for lack of trying. If you have a copy or a screenshot, by all means, send it to me. I am not sure if these forum posters were looking at an Amazon preview or the like. In any event, given the comments from her that we showed earlier, it's interesting that Tricia Barr was one of the authors of this book. This book that possibly had a typo of Clone 1. Typo my ass. Slave 1 will forever be named Slave 1 and true in the only canon. Its name in relationship to its owners makes complete sense from a variety of angles. Disney Lucasfilm, I would tell you to stop with the fallacious logic, to stop with the empty gestures. But Star Wars as a future property has already been destroyed by you. It now only exists as a great modern myth of the past before 2014.